Well, the last 2 weeks have been productive. What I've got in front of me here is a stack of web ribs in blanks. So they're all nicely shaped. They were shaped using this template and also a tool to route this for using this template. So that's all done well. Where this goes in the Camel, for those that don't know, is this is part of the center rib. That goes on the front, there's a spar in between, and off this end is a tail, which I've yet to do, and there's another spar that goes in here. Hope you enjoy. Kia ora, I'm building a Sopwith Camel. After my first video, where I made a template for a wing rib, or the outer of it, I've decided actually I want to redo it. I had builder's bog up in this corner up here, and I decided I want to get rid of that. So I created a new blank to cut out, and I'll get stuck into work on that shortly. I'll show you what else I was doing yesterday. This is most days. Oh, that's lunch. So yesterday I had a big pile of timber leaned up against this rack here, ready for cutting, and that has been transformed into this little lot, which I'll get to rack and stack. But yeah, that's all aircraft grade, all nice and straight, good grain, no knots. Also made progress on these. This is for a childcare centre. Basically numbers for 3 to 5 year olds. This had the first coat of varnish, and I'll whack a second coat on tonight. I'm going to run out of aircraft stuff to do. Decided to redo this particular mould. I think I've got a better way of doing it. Got a bit of a shine to it, it's got a coat of varnish on it. What I'm trying to do is get rid of the use of bog. So no bog on this one, although I did get a little bit enthusiastic at this point, and I've ended up layering a couple of layers of varnish, probably 3 or 4 layers of varnish to build up on this point here. But in the process of this, I've also figured out that I'm getting a bit enthusiastic on my measuring. Trusty calipers, and these measure quite nicely down to a 1/10 of a millimetre, actually a bit more than that. And I've worked out a 1/10 of a millimetre is actually like 1/128th of an inch. And given nothing is done to that degree of accuracy in a Camel, 1/10 of a millimetre is probably a bit too keen, shall we say. But nonetheless, I'm making this accurate to within 1/10 of a millimetre anyway, because I can, and what the hell. The new rib template for the front webbing is now pretty much done. It's had a coat of watered down varnish on this side. Still got to do the bottom yet, do that next. Once I've done that, I'll recheck all the dimensions, because the varnish adds a little bit. Make sure the dimension's still okay, sand and revarnish if I need to, and then that should be ready to go. And beside it, I've got my Mark III template for the centre rib, and probably can't see it very well on here, but I'll boost up a little bit on here, a little bit of extra varnish, a little bit more here. These are just where I was testing it yesterday, to make sure I had the dimensions right. I just wanted to build that up a little bit further. Oh. This is part of my first go at making templates for rib webs, or rather for the rib itself. What you're looking at is a clamshell style rib web form. Don't know what else to call it, but I'll talk you through what it is. The bottom edge here is screwed down by my finger, and the top edge moves to clamp everything in place. Within here you can see my lines for marking it up, and at the top here is the width of the cap strip, which goes along the top and bottom edge of the web ribs. Various parts go within the ribs. So this part here, that's where the spar will go through, the main spar. Up here you've got the nose, and that's another piece of wood that goes all the way down the length of the wing. Moving back, we've got the second spar. There we go, about here. So it goes through that point. You can see multiple lines there where I've obviously made mistakes and readjusted. I found that to be perfectly normal. And towards the back here, I can't quite see it under this, possibly not even remove it, but down here goes a tubing, aerofoil tubing called Ep2, which is stuff I'm going to have to manufacture myself. So part of this process is this here is my original centre rib template, just made out of scrap plywood and designed to fit within this with the appropriate sizing for the capping strips top and bottom. Not the actual capping strip size, because this rib goes into the capping strip by 1/8 of an inch, and the total width of the capping strips from memory is 3/8 of an inch, so that's a 2/8 of an inch gap top and bottom. Forgive me if I'm slightly out with these measurements, it's been a while since I actually knocked this up. And this one here, that's the tail rib, and that goes in the bottom, like so. And the spar will go smack bang in the centre. At the moment I'm replacing these, in the process of that. I've got this one around somewhere safe obviously, and I'm in the process of replacing that as well. In fact, I've currently got those on the bench over here, which I'll probably show on a different video. So this is my new template. I'll pick this up. This will go quite nicely under the string in here. Cool. Put there, so I've got room for the nose rib there and room for the spar here. You might notice that the spar is straight up and down. The spar is actually on a lean by 2.5 degrees, which is what this corrects for. So it'll go approximately about there. It's interesting what you pick up as you crack on and get stuck into these things. So yeah, so that piece is currently on the bench there, getting varnished up. Getting there. It's both ends done. It's got a coat of varnish all over. I need to check the dimensions just to make sure the varnish hasn't altered those. Seems at about 1/10 of a millimetre. Also need to sand off the ends, but I'll double check the measurements before I do that. Before I sand those off, and then that's done. I still have to make a baseboard to route around, put it into. So I'll probably do that during the week, and after that it'll be knock a few out and then create the template for the lightning holes. Getting there. Still working on my web rib templates. I'll show you where I'm up to at the moment. Yeah, so this is template at the moment. It's been checked of varnish. I've got to recheck the sizing on it to make sure the dimensions haven't changed due to the varnish, but I'm pretty happy with that. And what I'm currently working on is what's underneath, which is the template for the lightning holes. And like the previous one, I'll drill these out or cut these out, make sure they're to scale. I'll cut out a few actual ribs, and then I'll size up the border, and I'll route out to the border in order to get the new blanks fitted in, similar to what I did with the very first one. What I've also done is pop it back for a sec, down deeper into the garage. There's this. So this is for developing the blanks. This is Mark II with the bulk on the top. So I've got to locate the template in here, enable it to screw down, and also enable me to have screw lugs so I can pinpoint where the blank's going to go on top. In use, the router will sit on each of these surfaces as well as that, which will stabilize it and enable it to go around the outside accurately. One of the interesting things I found while varnishing stuff is, I showed this earlier, which is now varnished on the outside. I didn't varnish the inside because I didn't want to change the dimensions, but what I found, and if I can zoom in close, I'll see if I can get a little bit better light. Oh, my light's kind of failed me here. You'll see there's a texture difference in the surface, the top half being smooth and the bottom half being rough. The bottom half is where I used a rasp in order to size it, and I suspect, strongly suspect, that the top half is caused by the bearing of my router bit actually compressing the wood, which obviously changes the dimension as well, which is unexpected. I don't think it's been a critical change. I haven't noticed anything bad in the dimensions of parts I made, but I'll put another coat of varnish on that, which will hopefully bring it back out to what it was, and I'll make sure I varnish future ones before I start using them, just to toughen the wood up a little bit. I may need to provide more support on the outside edges for the router. Don't know yet, I'll see how it goes. That'll do for starters. So I've got the holes basically cut out. Got quite a bit of rasp work to do to get them down to the lines, and on this one I'm not entirely sure I got the hole centered right. There needs to be a 1/4 of an inch between the edge of this hole and that edge. Well, a 1/4 inch of meat left on the rib once it's done. So I'll take these roughly back to that second line there. These ones should be okay. Take these back to the line, and then I'll make sure I use a blank just to double check my dimensions. But yeah, pretty happy with that. A dribble is probably faster than a rasp, but that's what I got. You work with what you got. After a bit of time with the rasp and some sandpaper, and I bought a little flapper wheel as well. Thought I'd give that a go. It helped with smoothing around the corners, the circles, but it didn't help with removing material. Still had to use the rasp for that, but still a pretty good job. Happy with this. A stack of 17 blanks cut out on the scroll saw. Quite some pretty careful scroll sawing because I'm trying to maximise the amount of number of these I can get off the sheet. The sheet's pretty expensive. And also came across an interesting thing where this edge is perfect, this edge splintered on every single one. I'm putting that down to perhaps being a blade issue, so I'll go to buy a new blade tomorrow before I do any more of this. And hopefully I've got enough leeway that I can make sure this splintered edge doesn't end up in the rib. But next step tonight is to, with the help of my wife, take those inside where it's nice and dark, and I'll shine a flashlight through them. And what I'm looking for is voids in the plywood, which is a no-no. Voids and any other defects. There shouldn't be any, but it's worth checking. So I've got my first blank cut out for the web rib. Looking like that. That's come off. Using that as a template and using the router beside it. Now this piece of ply is actually a reject. I marked it on the back so I don't end up using it in aircraft by mistake. When I quality checked my plywood the other night, I bought a 4000 lumen work lamp, which not entirely comfortable with. It's hot, it's certainly bright, but it didn't appear to be shining all the way through. But what I did find though is edges that were peeling, that weren't quite glued down properly. This was actually the edge of one of the sheets, so I'm picking it's localized, but as a result this one's being rejected. But on the plus side, it means I've got a reject to test for things like how accurate my templates are. So I've done the first template, this one, checked the measurements on it, they're all within 1/10 of a millimetre of what I want, so I'm accepting that. And now I'm going to go on and create the rest of the 16 templates that I've got to do. So I'll keep the camera going and I'll probably fast forward from this point. I mentioned earlier that we had splinters coming out one edge, and I'll try and make sure I skip those. Brings you up to date with where I am at the moment. The next stage is to create the lightning holes for here and carry on working on the tail rib which goes on the back here. I'll keep working on that. Once I've got a set of these done with holes, a set of tail ribs done with holes, then I can carry on making web ribs until I've got the full set I need for a Sopwith Camel. And after that it's into making cap strips. I've already got those mostly made, but sizing those up for here and starting to actually create the ribs proper, and that'll be a huge leap forward. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Cheers.